I had to chuckle. Whatever Cheryl was doing in here to kick off in the meeting
Yeah.
today was, didn't hear what she was saying, but she had the arm movements going on and doing, it's like, okay, I don't know what she's doing, but this is funny.
But that is not what I want. Okay, it's doing something funky with the there. That's why, because I don't normally have it on. Hey everyone. Boardman, there's Kat. There's Krista, there's Mike. Somewhere. Notice bike. Ooh, fancy today. Fancy.
So
Are
Cat's
you
on.
conducting experiments in an evil scientist lab somewhere?
Well, I can't tell on the grounds that.
Yeah, Kat's on.
Yeah.
It's pretty.
Yeah, let's just say we're hoping for some light later. I guess I should have asked if you're reanimating corpse.
No, none of that.
Yes.
No, but I hear there's a zombie virus.
Nice.
Right. It's called TikTok.
Oh, is that what
Watch
it is?
out. Yeah.
Don't watch it or else.
I don't know, but when I see my kids doing this, I'm like, get the phone quick before they go into a coma.
I have not heard from Sarah.
Mm-mm.
I should attend the tacky.
That's right. Maybe I have heard from Sarah. Should probably check that.
You can keep that one.
Oh.
We have a quorum.
Technically, yes.
We can provide the video for her. Point her in the right direction for the link. Sarah, when you put it online.
Excuse me, would be here by now. He took the bus with the bike.
Oh dear.
And he called me and he goes, I left my helmet in the shelter there. And I was like, well, I'm gonna be late if I go back and look for it, so. You'll have to buy yourself a new one if it ain't there.
Well, we have
I
a
guess it's
quorum,
still on the bus.
so I am going to go ahead and call the meeting to order.
Oh.
First thing on our agenda is roll call.
That's right. Lonnie Rainville,
Here.
Janice Baker, here. Trotter.
Here.
Chat Stone here.
No Sarah yet, no Mike yet, and no Mark yet.
Perfect. We stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Janice, you want to lead us?
Pledge
Allegiance
Pledge
to
allegiance to the flag of the United
America.
States of America,
Republic,
and the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
and
with
justice for
liberty
all.
and justice for all.
That was weird.
Mark.
That was
awkward.
And for the record, Mark is online, just chimed in. All right, next on our agenda is item number 4, consent agenda. 4.1 is August 9th, 2021 regular meeting minutes, and 4.2 August financial report. And I'll entertain a motion to approve consent agenda.
I'll second.
We haven't had a motion yet.
Oh,
Make the motion.
yeah, I'll make a motion.
So Tom's made the motion.
A 2nd.
Janice second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Item 5, public comment for on agenda items only. Do we have any comments come in? Okay. No. Anybody online? We should look at that because it's hard to.
Uh-huh.
Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to 6. 6.1 TMP, Kettleson and Associate. I'll turn this over to you for introduction.
Sure. So we held our second technical advisory committee meeting this afternoon, and we went over our tech memos number 1 and 2, information on the driver survey and the online survey, and the passenger survey that was taken aboard the bus. And Krista and Susie with Kittleson and Associates are here to go over all of that information with us.
Okay, thank you for the introduction. Can I ask the host to provide me screen sharing and I can pull up a few slides here?
If I remember how to do that.
There should be a little triangle next to the share screen and an option to either allow everybody to share their screen or making me a co-host on the participant list would do that. Oh, I can. Okay. Lovely. Thank you. Make sure I can see you all on the side there. Before I jump into these slides, I would like to introduce our team here. So my name is Krista Purser. I'm a senior engineer in our Portland office at Kittleson Associates, and serving as the project manager on this effort. I'm also joined by Michael, our transportation analyst, who's helping on this, and Susie. Susie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Krista. Yeah, my name is Susie Wright. I'm a principal engineer at Kittleson and serving as principal in charge. Thanks for having us.
So I'll jump in. We did try to keep this pretty brief and just give you a nice overview of the work we've done so far, where we're at in this project. So I'll give the project overview and transit system and then be passing to Susie for our draft goals, policies, and practices language. We do have some discussion questions in here if there's time. Otherwise, we'll give you an update on what's next. So jumping into the project overview, we're looking at about a little over a year on this effort. So we got started back in May. We've got a number of tasks that have work us toward this ultimate transit master plan. So that does include our project management and stakeholder and public involvement throughout the efforts, as well as these more distinct tasks. So we are just here at the end of our existing conditions, just past our second tech meeting. And then we'll be moving into some transit needs and opportunities. So right now, we feel like we have a good understanding of what's out there. And we'll be moving into really identifying what are those gaps, what are the opportunities to fill them, and then evaluating, prioritizing those, and ultimately getting to that implementation plan and the transit master plan. So both short and longer range options. So looking to reconnect with all of you on our end. I'm sure Cheryl's been giving you plenty of updates, but we'll be back to you with a draft master plan for edit and comment, and then moving into an adoption in the spring. And let me know if you can hear my dog who's barking in the hallway. Otherwise, I'll keep going. So we did have some identified goals in our project scope. That's kind of where we started, and then we use these alongside some other aspects later on for the full project goals. But ultimately, we're looking to provide strategic guidance to UPTD, including the short, medium, and long-term guidance. Not only looking at what bus routes, what services we might be providing, but what are our recommendations for the stops, for transit facilities, for the fleet, and more programmatic coordination with adjacent providers, with local communities, and anybody else that may may be helpful in getting what the community needs on the ground. So that's strategic guidance looking to identify a multimodal transit system that increases ridership on existing routes and examines how services could be improved and better coordinated to meet those transit service needs. We'll keep moving in here for a quick transit system overview. There's a couple of slides that we had provided that are hidden, so you'll see that the slide number skips, but if you want to look more in depth at these things without opening up the larger memos, there should be some more materials in there for you. But some of the types of things we were doing in that existing system overview was looking at both UPTD services and connecting providers, trying to understand how frequent they are, what that means in terms of the reach of these services and where are those populations, both general population and populations who might be a little bit more transit dependent. So there's a number of maps showing where those densities are. We've got two in here in the presentation. It's really seeing a lot of higher instances of lower income people in some of the further extents of the county that can be harder to serve with a fixed route service. So we might be looking at other types of things like the existing demand response type services.
You said density, but is that not, that's not showing density, that's really just showing the low income.
Yes, this is a percentage of the total population in that census block group, but we do have some density maps in the full memo as well. And the zoomed in versions should also tell you exactly how much population there is considered lower income, or in this case, senior, 65 and older adult. So just recognizing there are people with a lot of needs away from some of the existing fixed route services, but that is challenging to serve those larger areas with transit efficiently. Some other maps we had done in there was looking at what types of activity centers people might be trying to access through transit. So that does include civic centers like city halls, county offices, grocery stores, large shopping centers, health and social services, hospitals, medical centers, and senior centers. So there's a series of maps for a lot of different communities and comparing those to where our existing bus stops are. So finding with the existing services, we were seeing this cluster over here that don't have fixed route transit, but again, that's one of your near term new routes that's getting implemented to serve those. So looking not just at where those populations are concentrated, but where are they trying to get to? And a number of ridership data sources and other historic trends we wanted to look at. So some of those types of things would be the amount of people riding per hour provided. So we see that peaking 2014 and 2015, the last couple of years, and that's on track with nationwide trends. Really the height of, we were talking about this at the TAC, the height of the fuel costs, and when those fuel costs started coming down, so did some of our riders. We've looked at this ridership data by month across different services, obviously with the large drop there in March and April of 2020, and looked at that by the different types of services, the fixed routes, the commuter routes, demand response. And I think I actually do have some of those slides. So again, a rides per hour comparison at the top, but also looking at how is that changing as service is getting added back in as we're coming out of or processing through COVID-19 pandemic. We are implementing more service and getting back to those pre-COVID levels. And we've seen the rides per hour in the last couple of months stay kind of stable and potentially tracking back up. So it does tell us that as we're adding that service back in, that ridership is climbing. It's still climbing, not near its pre-pandemic levels, but getting a little bit closer and at least keeping on track with the efficiency. I'm going to skip one more here. So looking at demand response, we didn't see this one hit as heavily from the stay-at-home orders in the beginning of the pandemic. Rides per hour pretty much staying around the same. Total rides coming back up as service has grown in the recent months. People tend to use these services for things like medical appointments they can't skip, and other more essential trips where, again, we don't see somebody who's working from home instead of going to the office, where their trip changed during the pandemic. So we do want to think about the long term beyond the next couple of years, but obviously there's a lot going on in these next couple of years and shorter term that we're thinking about and trying to consider how that changes how transit might serve Douglas County. Give a little overview of the outreach efforts. So the things we've done so far included an onboard survey along, I think, nearly every route, as well as demand response routes. We got a pretty good representation from people using the more local services as well as the longer range services. An online survey, and that was open to existing riders as well as non-riders. Survey for the bus drivers, let us know what their experiences were, what they hear from the public, and a few stakeholder calls so far with some local and neighboring transit providers and other jurisdictions. We'll be doing a second round of outreach a little later in this project when we have service opportunities to try to workshop those and get more feedback from the public and from key stakeholders then. Got a brief slide on the types of things we heard out of that outreach. So including high priority improvements from a lot of riders. They noted increased frequency, extended service hours, so earlier morning, later evening, and weekend service has really high priorities for them. There was a lot of interest in tools, including real-time vehicle arrival, being able to see when the bus was going to get there if it was running late, online and mobile trip planning, trying to understand how to use these services, and more park and rides. Most people were using services to access their work locations, shopping, healthcare, and social services. Both survey respondents, so existing riders, non-riders, and drivers, they all had very consistently high opinions of UPTD and its services. Very, very few people who were ranking anything low on the scale. And from the drivers, they especially highlighted that more transit service, bus stop improvements, and some driver training and education were high needs that they saw. Stakeholders we talked to noted barriers for community members in using transit, of those affordability, keeping fares low or limited for certain groups, technologies, when we were talking about these newer types of service that we see other places in the country exploring, and app-based services, some hesitation there that there's a lot of the population that won't have a smartphone or data and won't be really looking to use that type. And then geographic spread, again, rural areas, it's very challenging to give them access, and often those areas often have people who might be more dependent on the transit. I won't read through all this, but the other types of things we're doing are looking at capital assets. So things like the fleet, when do we need to replace those vehicles? What do we need to plan for? Transit stop amenities, park and ride facilities, especially since that came as a high interest from a lot of survey respondents. And transit technologies, some of the ones I had mentioned there with the real-time vehicle arrival, mobile ticketing, and others. We've also got the recent budgets and are looking at what those total amounts are. What have we seen historically, and in the future we'll look at what we might project there to be, trying to plan something that's within the financial constraints of the system and have that built in. I'm going to pass it over to Susie, but are there any comments or questions so far before we get into those goals?
I agree a lot with what she says, having just written it today. Definitely see some issues. In fact, that's why I was late. Well, the bus was late, so not that big a deal, 5 minutes late. We didn't stop at hardly any other stops. So you think it would make up a lot of the time. We only stopped at one other stop and picked up a few people. One was a lift with a lady with a baby carriage. Didn't take that long to do. For me to put my bike on was a few seconds, but you know, of course, they don't explain how to put your bike on or do anything. They just sort of sit there. So I had to kind of ask them. So that wasn't super clear. There was no information about mask wearing, so I didn't wear a mask when I got on the bus. I brought one with me, but I didn't see any. If there was something there, I didn't see it. It wasn't obvious. But he did. He brought me a mask. So I had a mask. So he gave me a mask, but I just pulled mine out. I just wanted to see if he would do that or not. But having not stopped at almost all of those stops, by the time we got to down toward here, we were even another 5 minutes late. So there's no way the schedule can work. I mean, it's never going to be accurate. And I understand that when you pick people up, but you should plan that you pick a few people up. But to miss almost every stop except for my stop and one other stop, and still be 5 to 7 minutes late, I timed it actually, then the schedule is wrong. There's no way the schedule can work, which continues to exacerbate the problem until you get to a catch-up area.
Yes.
Curious how they determine the schedules. 'Cause my last employer, we had a lot of problems with schedules too. I used to be a bus and train driver up there in Portland. And from my experience as a bus driver, like seconds matter quite a bit. So I would oftentimes put people's bikes on my bus because they would be too slow. It's like literally 5 or 10 seconds can make a difference. And certain times of day that it wouldn't schedule you enough time even just to drive the speed limit between various geographical locations. But I know up there anyway, the schedule riders, they would occasionally take like a company car and drive the route. And that's how they kind of write the schedule based upon that information. But it still doesn't approximate what it's like to drive a bus or a train. But it's an interesting topic though, the whole part of the schedules.
A couple other things I noticed was in the bus stop itself, bus shelter itself, there were schedules, and it was the updated schedule from 2014 and the updated schedule from 2017. And I assumed after a while of looking at it, and I figured out, oh, okay, this is for these different colored lines and stuff, and they're showing them all. But with all these dates of 2014 and 2017, I was like, I don't even know if any of this is accurate.
No, they should have all been January of this year.
There's nothing. Yeah, so they should all be consistent. I think if you redo one, you should redo all of them so they would all have the same date.
Yes.
And then the other piece I noticed, we didn't, of course, even stop at every stop. They say, okay, next stop is blah, blah, blah. And, they kind of slow down a little bit, but then they just kind of keep going. And so I'm thinking, well, shoot, if nobody wants to get up at my stop, how do I get off?
Oh.
And so there's nothing really clear if you haven't really driven it. And so, I've ridden buses before in Los Angeles, so I saw the yellow cord. I wasn't sure if you pulled it or whatever. I pulled it. I don't know what it was. But it wasn't, it certainly to somebody to how do you get off the bus? If you're not stopping at all the bus stops. So
I've hardly ever ridden a bus ever in my life, so
Yeah.
I wouldn't know.
So and then, and we could talk about the online piece too, she talked about seniors here. And so I thought, well, and I saw that online and I thought, well, what's UPTD's definition of senior? And it's not, if I couldn't find it anywhere on there. So I looked at what other transit agencies are in the state and they're almost all 60. But I see here they're using 65. But I could be considered a senior citizen at 55, or if I was going to the senior center at 50. So what is a senior?
Yes.
And there's senior prices, but does that apply to me? I don't know. You can't tell. That's what I'm saying. You can't tell. And so and then the whole bus schedule online was a static spreadsheet. So you've got to scroll way over, when you're in the afternoon. But now I can't see where any of the stops are over here. And so you're trying to scroll and just trying to plan it was just so difficult to even figure out how to take the bus and what time to get picked up and where it went and how to get there. So that was problematic. And then so I thought, well, I wonder if I did do dial ride. Do I qualify for dial ride? That's kind of where the senior thing came into. And I thought, well, I guess I don't qualify for dial ride, but I could be public, and take it if they have room. But the dial ride website shows all the old providers and it just has all old information. And then back to the UPTD site, there was nothing on transfers. So I either transfers are free or you don't offer transfers, but I couldn't find anything on transfers on the
This is all very good information because.
That's why I rode the bus today. I wanted to try it out.
Yeah. Because I was just telling Christine today that that's the next project is we have to get the website and all that information updated. So
anyway, that was my
this is really
experience
good.
today.
Yeah.
Perfect. So at the same time, let's get back to the presentation. All right, goals, policies, and practices.
Well, I think Mike, you corroborated some of the things we heard in the survey work, so thank you. And I think your kind of point about the on-time performance is actually something we don't have good data on, but it's really good information to hear because as many transit providers, as traffic increases, so most rural providers or small providers try to keep a fixed schedule so that when you get on at let's see, Garden Valley Boulevard and Airport at Taco Bell. It says the schedule says the bus is there at 7:15 a.m., 8:15 a.m., 9:15. Like, and if that's your stop, you'll know and remember my bus comes. It's going with not sure which direction we're going, northbound. It comes at 15 minutes after every single hour. And so for systems that don't have really great state-of-the-art online, schedule information, real-time arrival, riders just kind of get used to, okay, my bus is here at 15 minutes after every hour. But the challenge, as you can kind of point it out, once it gets to be peak hour, trap or afternoon, evening, even maybe sometimes morning, and it's congested, the buses have a harder time meeting that schedule. And the schedule might have been set either before congestion really increased, or it's set to kind of more the average condition of the day. Because if it's set with too much time, it's the trip takes too long. They have to dwell everywhere. So my point from your comment is that at some point a system needs to make a decision to say, okay, we're going to move off of a time-based schedule where we hit the same stop at the same minute each hour. As you start to deal with a lot of congested situations, the travel time between stops differs throughout the day. And so a rider would then really become much more reliant on having a schedule to help them remember that, okay, it's not at 15 minutes after. It varies throughout the day because of traffic. So that's just and it's a pretty significant change for a transit agency to do that because it changes all of their transfers for all of the routes, both within their system and external to you. So, but it is something that at some point, as traffic increases and congestion increases, that switch does need to be made so that you can have as quick of trip at any time of the day. You can have quicker trips in off-peak periods and have the schedule reflect the congestion that the buses are also dealing with in the peak periods. So definitely maybe a need we'll identify at some point, maybe not too distant future, UPTD needing to move to schedules that vary throughout the day to reflect that traffic condition. Any thoughts on that, Cheryl? I'm sure you've probably already had some of those discussions.
Yes, so a lot of the schedule will be changing as we go through this process. Part of what we are in the process of doing is revising the Roseburg route to include Deer Creek, Pomona, and Sunshine. Those three complexes that one of them is going in, but the other two are already in. And so what we're going to do is we're going to split the north-south and the east-west apart. and then revise the schedule as we do that, because there's the public process that we're going through. And then once we do that, once we have that timing down, then we will post it for the 2 weeks, the required 2 weeks before we make the change, and we'll have public comment on it again. It'll change things some. The other thing that'll change some of that is the splitting the Winston and Sutherland apart. And so there are a lot of changes coming that are going to address those challenges in the schedule. And driver training is also a piece of that as well. If you start out 5 minutes behind, you're going to run 5 minutes behind in the afternoon. 2 o'clock on, you're going to run behind if you start out behind.
Well, I assumed 5 minutes and then a little bit, but 5 became 10, which became 12, and we hit mostly green lights.
Yeah.
So, I was surprised when I actually saw it on the schedule, because I thought, wow, I can't even hardly drive across and with my car across town in that amount of time.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so moving forward, so as we start to think about the future and what kind of goals should be guiding this planning process, we went through, so one looking at, as Cheryl and UPTD were thinking about this project, obviously there are a lot of kind of goals in mind for what they're hoping to accomplish and address through this planning process. We also did a thorough review of other plans, existing plans and documents, including the county's transportation system plan, along with each of the city's transportation system plans, as well as Oregon's public transportation plan and Douglas County's transit improvement plan. So kind of looking at recent planning documents that address transit as well in different levels. And some of the key themes from that review of previous planning projects was interest in improving service for transit dependent populations, establishing a safe and convenient system for people walking and biking to transit in particular, promoting service frequency, or maybe we should say increasing or encouraging UPTD to increase service frequency and reliability, and encouraging coordination and consistency with other planning efforts, and that the plan be financially sustainable and eligible for grant funding, or with a lot of projects that are eligible for grant funding. So in the goals development, as I mentioned, we were both looking at the goals that were set out at the beginning of the project, the intent for the plan, looking at the goals in the plan review that I just mentioned, looking at what riders and people we surveyed, non-riders and other stakeholders wanted to see from this project or see as needs, and also gathering input from our technical advisory committee. That was kind of the process that we went through the goals development, and we have a set of goals and policies and a kind of a description of what those kind of mean in action or in practice. And these are going to help guide the development of the plan as we start to develop needs and project opportunities. The goals are one thing that we would do kind of a comparative assessment, and okay, well, if these are our goals, what are our needs to get there? So our proposed goals, these are our proposed goals at the beginning of the project, and we certainly they'll be help guide the plan development, and then be kind of looked back at before we adopt the plan to see if they need any revisions based on kind of what we were able to accomplish or found or learned through this process. So the proposed goals being goal 1, provide improved transit services for residents, employees, and visitors throughout Douglas County. So not just focusing on residents and seniors, but really thinking about people who are needing to go to and from jobs, and also people who may be visiting. Enhancing coordination with key partners and stakeholders, promoting livability and user convenience throughout the county, and establishing an environmentally and financially sustainable transit system. Next slide, please. The next 4 slides kind of go through more detailed policies in support of those goals. So goal 1, policies related to prioritizing improvements for transit dependent populations, improving transit frequency and reliability for all the different services that UPTD provides, and expanding the geographic coverage of the services that UPTD provides, and connecting activity centers and schools and government centers and grocery stores, et cetera, to where people live. So in practice, what this goal and policies mean is that we would be establishing an evaluation framework and a monitoring program that considers service of transit dependent populations, providing thresholds for frequency improvements, reliability and on-time performance tracking, and triggers for new geographic coverage. I'll pause there before maybe I'll take a pause, but each goal just to see if folks have any questions or comments for us. And I'll also give you some time to ask us questions at the end. Okay. Moving forward. Goal 2, enhancing coordination with key partners and stakeholders. So policies to help advance that goal. So fostering new and innovative partnerships to really help sure we're sharing and leveraging resources, collaborating with local governments, and connecting transit providers, forming partnerships with key stakeholders, and establishing ongoing feedback channels to improve customer service. So in practice, what these policies would result in, and it would be meeting regularly with cities, connecting transit providers and employers and community-based organizations and other key stakeholders to discuss transit needs. So doing that as part of the plan development, as well as on a more ongoing basis. All right, next slide, please. Feel free to just jump in if you want me to pause. Goal 3, promote livability and user convenience throughout Douglas County. So those policies being related to improving the community and beautification through increased transit infrastructure, including bike and pedestrian connections to bus stops and improved bus stop amenities. Prioritize strategies to reduce single occupancy vehicle trips. Monitoring demand from smaller communities and considering improvements to service as communities continue to grow. So in practice, what that would mean would be developing transit service opportunities that improve both inter-county and intra-county connectivity and enhancing bus stop access and amenities. Okay, next slide, please. Last but not least, goal 4, establish an environmentally and financially sustainable transit system. So policies related to pursuing clean fuel for transit vehicles, such as electrification, fostering financial sustainability by establishing local funding sources to supplement existing sources. We kind of only touched briefly on that financial slide, but looking at the portion of local funding that UPTD has is pretty small compared to many other providers that have a local funding source that's just some sort of a tax or fee. We do understand that Douglas County is kind of capped out on the property tax side, but really to be able to enhance services consistent with the needs we identify, identifying some additional local funding will be a key element of being able to implement the plan. But it is true that stiff funding and some federal funding is likely to continue to grow, very small and incrementally, kind of consistent with population growth. But that those sources are really likely only to help kind of sustain increasing services at a kind of a rate consistent with the population growth. And hopefully that can keep up with inflation. And those are some of the financial details as we start looking at this next step in the process. We'll be looking at in a little bit more detail.
Will there be examples of financial funding sources from other districts?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Is it inappropriate of me to ask where is the recreation and tourism goal that actually makes money? Is that inappropriate at this time under this topic?
Maybe you can elaborate a little bit, or somebody else, on kind of what that goal is. I'm assuming you're to see a greater proportion of recreational trips using the service.
Cheryl, could you please elaborate on this a little bit? You were there with me.
Well, she's looking at this is Kat that's asking the question, and what we had been discussing was the possibility of getting like a flat grant to be able to go to Crater Lake or Diamond Lake, Tokenie up there during the summertime, more of a recreational kind of thing.
Exactly, and we could go to the coast and we could have trailers to haul people's OHVs while they park their cars here in central Douglas County and build up more on tourism, because tourism actually brings in money. Recreation brings in money. So I don't know why it doesn't fit in our goals.
Yeah, that's a great comment. We will consider that. Yeah, talk to Cheryl more about that offline in our advisory committee. Yes, there are there are other transit agencies that do a decent amount of recreational transit, such as like Cascade East Transit in Central Oregon. And I know that one of their goals in particular is for those services to at least be neutral, whereas most services are, subsidized. They make sure that those services, like, they're not using they're either getting a FLAP grant, or the ski resorts, for example, are paying for it, or they're getting really high, like they're in a shuttle for river rafting, river tubing, and so forth. And though they're charging fares commensurate with what to make the system sustainable. So they make sure that all those recreation services are separate kind of from the rest of their system, and that each one is sustaining itself either through its FLAP grants, or through the fares, or through donations, or not donations, funding, I guess you could say, from the businesses and recreation providers that are benefiting from that service. So that is certainly something we can identify as a need and a possibility in the plan.
And to add
I
on, we did
sure appreciate it.
Mhm.
we did get a little survey interest about going out to the coast that had come up. And I think we can look at these policies and see if we can make that a little more explicit. Like grant funding opportunities are 4.3 there. That's a great grant funding opportunity. We should have some opportunities lined up for.
And service to the coast doesn't have to be just considered recreation. There's other state grants for intercity connections that can be considered for those types of routes. Okay, next slide, please. So the goals are also being used to help us establish evaluation criteria. So we're using evaluation criteria as we develop, as we've used the goals and the other needs identified through outreach to identify needs. We're going to be kind of evaluating those needs and the opportunities to address those needs, kind of using this set of evaluation criteria that really help us understand the pros and cons of that kind of service opportunity, or you could consider it an alternative or a project. And so it's providing us information, these criteria are really providing us information about that project that help us understand, well, what are we getting from this project? How is this project addressing our goals and our needs? And so the criteria, as I said, are based on goals, and also intended to be in alignment with the types of criteria that are frequently asked for in different grant opportunities. At the end of the project, we'll also be establishing some possibly slightly different measures at the end that we would consider more for monitoring performance, but they would be very kind of related to the criteria that we use moving through the project. Next slide, please. So I haven't, so the specific criteria are in your memos. We, for brevity, kind of not going through each of them, but we're definitely looking at things like the amount of population within a quarter mile, the amount of jobs within a quarter mile of different alternatives, things related to potential ridership, cost, and how productive we think that additional service hours might be from a cost per hour, cost per rider, and what kind of connectivity is it providing? Is it enhancing the number of connections available to people, and or is it addressing any of our other goals? So with that, I think we would really love to take a few minutes, as much time as you all would like to take from your agenda, just to give us some input on what you would like to achieve with the plan. And if you have any key questions about operations or the existing service, you're hoping that we can help answer. And if you think there's any particular, what do you think are the biggest challenge kind of facing UPTD, and what goals and policies are most critical to you? So that's a little bit of a menu of questions that you don't have to address all of them, but it would be great to hear a little something from everybody, just so we have an understanding on, what your interests are and how we can try to address them through this process.
I mean, I think, I know we already have plans to go to increasing the headway. I don't, an hour doesn't work, if it happens to, get you where you want to go, okay, but, if you got to go there an hour early, do I want to ride it? If I get there a half hour early, I'm more likely to want to do it. It's not as big a deal as an hour.
Yeah.
Another thing I think is confusing sometimes is the colors. They're just colors, I mean, there's no scheme to whatever, so it's not always really easy to remember, especially when they kind of loop around. They're going this direction and the same color goes back and around, and sometimes they have numbers that are like even one way, odd another, or that are it's this route and this route, because this route goes that way, number goes that way or something. I would like to see, I guess, dial rides and the fixed route system support each other more. So we're not necessarily having to bring buses where we don't need buses, and this even allocating certain size buses to certain areas and other buses to, depending on the ridership or things like that. And then also stop amenities. So having bus shelters. So, I think I saw somewhere that the Walmart stop is the biggest stop, or one of those, I think, on U-Trans. And I see a lot of people always waiting across the street at the mall there with just a sign. So, working to maybe find additional shelters, and especially as we increase service to Winston and Sutherland and down in the South County loop to Myrtle Creek, and, just make sure that it'd be nice to really establish a shelter locations in some of those. And not just a shelter, but the other thing I noticed was it'd be nice to have a trash can.
Yes.
Which of course requires maintenance, but beats all the cigarette butts and the cups and the plastic that's all around the trashy looking around the shelters, because there's nowhere to put that stuff.
I think you touched on something that I was thinking about. It kind of ties back to financial. Coming through South County route, it's a big bus that comes through there. And a lot of times it looks like there's one or two riders on these big buses that are traveling clear through South County. Is there smaller vehicles that can go into these areas where they don't have a large number of riders? I believe you'd say fuel costs, possibly time, because the bigger buses would take longer to maneuver around. And so just doing an evaluation to match up the buses to the ridership in the outlying areas.
And then I think the other piece is the stops. I think the stops are pretty well located at places you want to go to, but they're not necessarily in proximity to where you want to come from. So if I want to go shopping, as long as I can get myself to a shopping area, then I can go, do shopping and doctor and all that other stuff. But I'm glad to see that you're gonna do, you're gonna do some stops at these high density locations, but there are other locations or lower income places that maybe the buses could be rerouted. So for example, and maybe there's a couple, but down 99, could you go down Main Street instead of being on 99, or maybe that's not even a good location because that's not necessarily even always that far. But it seems like there's a little, even the all the senior housing that's right behind on Eden, was it Edenbar? But behind Walmart, there's the huge senior housing there. There's other tons of apartment complex, pretty high density right there. So they're I don't know if those are opportunities or not. I don't know what the income levels and things are there, but it just seems like there's places like that maybe that if you could get the bus closer to those neighborhoods, I think sometimes it's nicer to do it. So.
Yes.
But I understand you also have to go, around the corner.
Well,
to where the
even in
locations are.
those areas, if we could develop a different kind of a route that is specific to dwell in one of those apartment complexes for a period of time that allows them, it's got a 5-minute stop over there. So it's got time for people to be able to come and get on with their walker or their mobility device, where they're not feeling rushed and it's not on the street, and then go on to the next one and the next one, and then get them into the senior center or the shopping areas and have that at a time of day that it's going to serve the type of people that we're picking up in those areas. We can't have a one size fits all anymore. It just doesn't.
So my understanding is that you're still going to be collecting information for a period of about a week. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
The 17th, I think is.
So what I suggest is based on what you hear tonight, what the information is that you received tonight, think about it. And then if you have any comment, you can either provide it to Cheryl and we can make it a part of the process.
I think one more challenge though, real quick, if I may, is getting to Reedsport. So the connection, I think that coastal piece, but not just Reedsport, Winchester Bay. I just really want to go to the coast. Reedsport isn't the coast, it's out by the coast, but Winchester Bay gets you there.
When we can get that lifeline piece back into place.
Yeah.
We went to through Reedsport, had several stops through Reedsport, and then we went on to Winchester Bay and Lakeside, and then turned around and came back through. Yeah.
And does that connect up then with Coos County Transit? Is that what that?
Initially
Lakeside
it
does?
did, and as soon as we started our service, then they got their service, so it changed. I don't believe they're going to Lakeside anymore. Yeah, but our Dial-A-Ride service is doing a Friday run to Coos Bay, so we could potentially connect with our Dial-A-Ride service. Ask people on that way.
Yeah, I think it's just that transit service out there. That's the kind of piece that I think is probably one of the most difficult challenges because they're so far and it's a small community.
Yes.
Thank you for this great presentation. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Good.
That's
Jennifer
what they say,
says they're
Reedsport
good.
and Winchester Bay. Huh.
Nice.
Perfect. All right. Thank you. All right. Moving on to item 6.2, OGEC. And
Thank you, Krista.
I'm going to turn this over to Ron
Sure.
to discuss about some options with this and kind of take us through what we're looking at.
So my first question, board, is in July, did the board receive any preliminary or information from the commission? Because they met in July to discuss it and they were supposed to be an issued preliminary letter.
They did. They sent that here. I think we got those last meeting, correct?
Okay.
So, yes.
And so I have not read that, but I reached out to, I spoke with Cheryl today, it's Lisa Kristen. My understanding, and so where it fell off my radar because when John Parker was talking to them in June, I was gone for 2 weeks from the 18th, I think, through the 30th. And that's when I had reached out to Ms. Kristen before leaving. And then just didn't pick up the thread. There's like 3 emails between her, John, and me. I called her and reached out via email. And so my understanding through John at the time was that there were mitigating, well, and I haven't read the letter, so I don't know, but there were mitigating factors regarding, there was an executive session and the consensus or whatever, was reached in that, was put on the record in the main portion of I guess, the regular meeting. My understanding in June is that a letter, I need to draft a letter from my office to the board, the commission, stating that the board was operating under direction of council. That is, you guys can go rogue. This was not a, you weren't trying to slight or do something against what the rules for executive sessions were, that you were operating under and direction of council, which was not as informed as it should have been. And so that's my fault. And my understanding is that that makes this not a non-issue, but it goes away, that there isn't going to be any kind of formal action, is my understanding. And so I wanted to reach out to Lisa Kristen today. I called her and emailed her. I'm waiting for a response just to see how they want to proceed. And so I just need to, if I can get a copy of that letter, I want to browse through that. If there are mitigating or policies or procedures they want the board to take, it sounds like it would be in that letter. I don't know. If there were recommendations, or were they just reporting the findings, the alleged
I
findings?
think they were just, I'm trying to remember if I read it or not, but I think we just said that they held their executive session, the board did, that
They would let you know.
and
They were gonna
Basically-
proceed with having a hearing on it, which is scheduled for January. So basically, the meeting was just whether or not they proceed with it.
Okay,
They decided to, and then the actual review hearing isn't until January.
okay,
But they sent out an email. I think everybody probably got this email. Basically saying that if we want to, we can forego the hearing and just
Right.
have us send out a letter of education.
right,
And so,
to the board.
well, we would basically submit that we, consent to have this letter of education.
Right,
And so that's my question
which
is,
is like a admonishment, is what it sounds like. It's no formal action. It says, dear board, this is what happened, this is what shouldn't have happened, this is how you solve this in the future, and we'd like to see a training. I'm guessing, we'd like to see a training on these issues and how to conduct these meetings. And that's it.
Right.
And so I'll continue to work with Ms. Kristen, and if we can do that, I just need to know from the board, and that's something that either needs to be on the agenda next month or.
the way she made it sound like when I was emailing, it's an individual choice per board member.
Okay. So I'll ask her about that,
Yeah.
because I represent the organization, not the individuals. And that was one of the things that John had a question about. Because there's the question about whether this was against the chair at the time or against the organization. And I asked Ms. Kristen about that in the email, just how it's going to go forward. So if I guess I can't give you individual advice on what you should do.
Mhm.
I have thoughts on what probably is the best course of action. And and if after making contact with Ms. Kristen, if I can give you more information, so you guys can I can just give you general information without giving you legal advice, what this means, what this letter is going to mean, what it entails. Likely it would mean that anybody who looked up, any member of the board would be able to see that a letter of education was issued. And so if that bothers you and you want to go to a hearing, that's fine too. And so those are the kind of things that I'll ask her and find out, and I can report on.
I think I responded to her, just said, I don't care. I said, we asked the question, we were advised by our attorney to do it this way. But, if a letter of admonishment makes it easy, whatever, just get it done.
And it sounds like that's what they're sending out, that they're not anticipating any formal action being necessary. It just depends on who on the board would like to go to hearing. And that's fine too. So I will, as soon as I get a response, I will email Lonnie the response, or and then I'll just CC you on communications.
That'd be great.
Once I make contact with her. And then you can forward those to the board.
Perfect. That works.
We just gotta be careful about email communications. I think I outlined that in a previous email.
Mhm.
So if I start CCing everybody and then we have a discussion, that's a public meeting.
Right.
So.
Okay, perfect.
I want to note that she has her mind made up. I left that meeting early, did not vote. She refuses to even listen. I told her to pound sand, basically.
It's
So
a
she's
meeting.
gonna do whatever she's gonna do,
Yeah.
and I'm going to ignore her communications.
Are you talking about Lisa?
I think so.
Yeah.
Any questions for Ron on this? All right, hearing none, we'll move to 6.3, preventive maintenance program. Cheryl, you want to take this one on?
Sure. So in your packet, you have a copy of our revised preventive maintenance program. This is a portion of the findings from our site review. We did not have all of our vehicles in the plan, and we did not, there was, of the vehicles I had listed, the actual maintenance intervals were missing for one of the vehicles. So it is completely updated with all of the vehicles, including the ones that we received back from the dial-a-ride programs, and the brand new one that once we received it, we issued it to Mercy. So every single vehicle we have is in here. The preventive maintenance intervals are in here. The goals and objectives are appropriate. It gives examples of our preventive maintenance check that we have the mechanic go through on a monthly basis and identify what's wrong with the vehicles, and allows us to schedule the maintenance prior to the vehicle breaking down, which is ultimately what we want to do. The one piece that is not in the copy that you've received is the annual inspection form. And that is a six-page Excel spreadsheet, and it's a download from the ODOT website. We don't deviate from what they recommend. It's exactly what they recommend. So there is another version of this that has that combined in along with the cover page to make it look pretty. But this meets all of the requirements of our site review for the preventive maintenance plan.
So does Mercy have to have one too as a contractor?
So theirs is, their vehicles are included in ours,
Uh-huh.
and yes, they will have to have one. I am going to help them develop it simply because it can't just be a copy of the pages of the manual and that we plan to do this. And that's pretty much what all of the other providers had been given, was just we adhere to the preventive maintenance intervals, and this is what they are. And so we want it to be appropriate. It doesn't require them to do any more work, and I can just cut and paste out of this and create one for them. And they're working really hard to make sure that everything that they're doing is in the parameters of our system. They're working with Crystal on the driver input into the tablets to ensure things are more and so I think that's the least that I can do is put that together for them.
Do we need to do any kind of a solicitation for vendors, for, mechanics, for lifts, for, just whatever it is, a wrap, all those different things that
So
could come into play?
the vendors for the larger vehicles are so limited that there are like BNS Automotive over in Winston.
Mhm.
They can work on any size of our vehicle, but there are certain types of jobs for the larger vehicles that they can't do. And those go to SODI because they're the ones that are able to do that. So right now, we haven't done that because we haven't entered into a contract with one provider for those services. And Mercy, they go to a different provider for their vans than we go to for our vans. But there's really only one certified lift inspector here in the Roseburg area that doesn't have to travel, and they work for Mobile Tune. So they actually come out and do our lift inspections on site. So we have this conglomeration and we find what's going to fit best for what the need of that vehicle is. So the reason that this is in front of you tonight is because it is a something that came through the site review. It was recommended that the board approve the plan. So,
And how often is it updated? I know
so
that we're doing a new one, but
right,
when
so-
would we expect it? A couple of years? or
well,
4 years?
minimally, we should be updating it every year. But in addition to that, every time we receive a new type of vehicle.
Mhm.
Oh, we didn't put in.
Because we add that then to the vehicle list that is on page 42. So that lists all the different vehicles that we have and all of the ones that we just got through the Dial Ride program.
So do we have to do it like before the van goes in service? I wanted just, we're going to take some out of service sometimes too.
Right.
I
So we
just wonder if we can do them all at one time. That's all.
We have several of them listed on here, actually 4 of them that are listed on here as vehicles that are disposed of. But we have to keep records of them, of each one of those vehicles and their disposition for 3 years after we dispose of them.
Oh, okay, so they stay on the list for 3 years. Okay.
Until we're completely done, yeah. And that's just a fail safe so that we don't forget. And
Are they separated out on the list as?
on my list in the computer, they're red.
Okay.
On this one, they're not.
On mine, they're highlighted.
So I guess what we would need would be a motion to approve the updated preventive maintenance plan.
Is there any other questions for Cheryl on this? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the preventive maintenance program.
I'll move to approve it.
Mike's made the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 6.4, facility maintenance plan. Cheryl.
Okay, so the facility maintenance plan, we actually had in place when we did our site review. What we did not have on the maintenance plan was a place to put the initials of the person who inspected each piece, the date they were inspected, or the asset rating. So when we did the initial inspection in December of 2019, when we purchased the building, and then we had some repairs done to the building after the inspection that was done at that time, all we did was list that there were repairs done. So what we've done as a result of the site review is we've added who it is inspected by, the date that it's inspected. And then the next time around when we do it, we had to add that it's an annual inspection as well. And then the next time around, we'll add the asset rating that matches us up with Optus. And then on the very back page.
So are we having like a building inspector, like when we bought it, or just?
We can if necessary, but we had multiple inspections done. One was done by Bug Zapper, and they went through it and they filled all of the cracks and holes where we could have any kind of intrusion of bugs or critters. And and the folks that did the roofing, they said, you know, this type of a roof very rarely needs any kind of a repair. So we have folks that, you know, they might, like a dial ride driver, would have a ride that cancels, comes in and asks, what can I do? And we can give them something on the list and have them go through, like check all the lights in the building and make sure that all the lights are functioning, or that all of the electrical outlets are functioning. So we can actually have our own folks do the inspection, and I'd have to sign off on the final portion of it.
So is this going to be a responsibility of the operations manager?
Why, yes, it is. The operations manager that we had for several months is actually who did the greater majority of the inspection for this. I did some of it, but I put the document together and he went through and did a very detailed inspection. He actually did a really good job. Yeah. So this also is changes due to the site review, and it's something that the board would need to vote to approve.
Any other questions for Cheryl? Hearing that, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I move to approve.
Motion by Mike, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Janice. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 6.5, resolution 21-5, Title VI policy. Cheryl?
So the Title VI policy is also another one that needed to be updated. We needed to add the limited English proficiency plan, and there were a number of other things that needed to be updated. I have forwarded this to ODOT, and they are forwarding it to the civil rights folks. I haven't got a response back yet. So what I would recommend is that we actually review before the next meeting, and then once we have the okay from ODOT Civil Rights Division, then vote to adopt it at that time. Because I'd hate to have you adopt it and then we have to update it and redo it. Yeah.
So we'll wait on that one to take any action.
Yes.
Any questions for Cheryl on 6.5? And now we'll move into item 7, old business. 7.1, board's bylaws. So we were sent out the bylaws with all the discussion points from our last meeting. So at this point in time, I will entertain a motion to approve the board bylaws as written.
Move to approve the bylaws.
Okay, with a motion from Mike,
Second.
second from Janice. Any discussion? Okay. All in favor of approving 7.1 board bylaws?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries.
To
7.2,
make sure that Kat's, I don't know if she's talking or not, but she's muted.
Hmm.
I haven't heard anything from her.
What was I supposed to say? I didn't hear any questions.
Nothing.
A motion, yea or nay?
Well, no,
so we have one nay. Item 7.2, board protocols. Again, same thing. We discussed it last meeting. We had a few changes that were made, so we are basically approving what we made the changes to last meeting. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the board protocols.
Move to approve the board protocols.
Motion from Mike,
I'll second it.
Second from Tom. Thank you. Janice, thanks you too. Any discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Yeah,
Opposed? Did she say nay or?
I'm not sure.
Was that a yes or no, Kat?
this time it was a yes.
Okay. So motion carries. Cheryl, can we combine 7.3 and item number 8?
Yes.
Okay.
They're virtually one and the same.
Okay, so let's go ahead and move to item number 8 then. Manager report.
Okay, so you have this page in the packet. And all I did was take the goals that you guys had given me, put it in an Excel spreadsheet so that I could see the lines easier. And make it in a larger font so I could see it easier. But as you can see, that every single one of the goals that is on the list is either complete or like the civil rights Title VI plan. We had that for review tonight, but we can, we're postponing that till next time. The UPTD no-show policy in accordance with the audit findings is actually complete. I had put it in as in process because I felt like it had been so long since I did it, I needed to review. But I went through and I just highlighted. I did not provide this, although I can email it out to you. It's the Umpqua Rides Paratransit Service Refusal and Suspension Policy and Procedures. And we were supposed to update the no-show portion of it because the information that was presented during the site review stated a number after a specific number of no-shows that somebody could be suspended. And that's not how we do the process. It is based on case-by-case determination and cannot be viewed as a basis for automatic service suspension or refusal. So it's a demonstrated pattern of no-shows. And so that language has all been updated and is incorporated now into our packet that goes out with applications. So like I said, I had put it in process when I created this document, but it's actually complete. So the only one left that is in process is hiring a new operations manager. And we have not actually started that process. We have the ads out there, but we haven't actually started interviewing anybody yet. All the reports are complete. All of the reimbursement requests are complete. Virtually all of the reimbursements have been received. And we are current on our APR and SPR reports and all of our reimbursement requests. We made all of the deadlines to be able to receive our funding. There was only one question, and that was for the RVHT rural veteran health transportation. And that was our partnership that we had done with South Lane Wheels. And initially, the way that the program was explained to us was that if we set the service up and it was specific to veterans, that's what we needed to do. And so that's what South Lane Wheels, they set the Lane Douglas connector up that went from Cottage Grove to the VA here in Roseburg and then back to Cottage Grove and up to the Eugene VA. Never had difficulty getting it approved this time because the people writing it are not veterans. So South Lane Wheels has they've received another funding source for that service. So it's a really good thing. Yeah. So beyond that, we have done a number of trainings that with the online trainings through special districts and also through ODOT. And I have another one set up to be able to do tomorrow. So We are kind of in a process of revising goals at this point and setting the goals for this next quarter. Beyond getting reporting done on time, website is one of the top things on our goal list, is to get that updated and complete, but also to get the all of the STIF projects into a spreadsheet that can show you what the expected progress is, what the goals are for those as well. So should have that for you, if not before the next board meeting, at least by the next board meeting.
Right is probably one of the most important ones because it has you contact some of the old providers on the
Yeah.
website.
So if you actually click into anything on that website, it takes you to our transit website. Yeah, it's just a static page. So
Even the U-Trans one could be updated and just to something more modern.
oh yeah, we've got tons of
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And by the way, that reminds me, on the tech memo, back to the plan, they had it called Douglas Rides instead of Umpqua Rides.
Oh,
So just to update the name
Yes.
terminology.
okay. Probably because they went to that page.
Might very well have been.
Yes, and I'm sorry I missed that. I did not catch that going through that.
I mean, maybe they corrected. I was looking at a draft tech memo at my office, but
Gotcha.
She updated the draft to the final.
yeah. Okay.
She did
So
catch
just-
some of those.
Okay, good.
So, and our
We'll double
ridership is the only other thing to report on, and we are, I thought we were going up. We're just kind of holding even. Went down just a little bit this last month. South County commuter is the only one that went up in ridership. The Roseburg fixed route dropped by about 31. So that's really close. And then the Winston Sutherland commuter also dropped by about 30. But the South County commuter went up by about 20. So it is Umpqua Rides that is going up. 1794 total rides in July to 1855 in August. And as we get more drivers trained, and Mercy now has 3 vehicles. So they have 2 full vehicles every day, and they have a spare, which is huge for that.
And there aren't any COVID spacing protocols or anything that I could tell, right?
So our COVID spacing protocols are the ones that ODOT has out, and they're in line with OHA, CDC, and the federal guidelines, but it is 3 feet between passengers and 6 feet between the driver and passengers. So if that is not still clearly marked on the buses, then we need to go through and fix it, because
The seats were up, so there was clearly the 6 feet between the passengers and the driver. But I was looking for some. I didn't really see any COVID, anything.
okay, yeah, it should be on there. It should be,
Maybe it's on the doors, but the doors were open, so I couldn't see the doors.
well, it
Well,
should be,
most of the people that I know that ride the bus are not riding the bus right now. They are not riding the bus because of the D variant, and they are terrified. And there is just, the county's in recovery. COVID doesn't exist anymore. There's no distancing. Come on, it's crazy. So that's probably where your ridership went down in at least the educated areas.
well, so the drivers are instructed, and we have a policy that says that they're going to check their temperature when they come through the door. Anybody that is running a temperature of 99.9, but some people run low, so we've given them that leeway.
Oh, our temperature is supposed to be?
So I thought they dropped that.
Well, so we're doing it for our drivers and our employees, because we don't want somebody working sick.
Nobody got their temperature checked in. It was riding the bus I was on.
Oh, not on the bus, our employees as they come
Oh,
through the
your
door.
employees.
Employees,
So, so we're making
The
sure.
I was
that-
like, what?
Yeah, no, so we're making sure the employees are
Yeah.
doing what they're
Yeah.
supposed to do. And then we have the UV lights cleaning the bus. So those lights go in and that they sit in there for a period of time to kill the germs and anything in the air and on the surfaces. And then the drivers are supposed to be handing out the masks to anybody that doesn't have a mask when they board the bus. So there are rules and regulations have never changed, so I'm surprised to hear you made it on board without having a mask on.
I made it from Fred Meyer's to Dairy Queen.
And that is unfortunate.
You eventually got one though.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but it did
So-
give me one. Yeah, and it was in a nice little baggie, Ziploc baggie and everything. So,
yeah.
yeah, I was gonna give it back to him, but I must have fallen between the seats or something somewhere. So.
Yeah.
So that kind of brings up another thing I was wondering about the, kind of what Kat was talking about. People are scared and I think that's true. It's out there. But it kind of gets back into the advertising.
Mhm.
And, not only advertising whoever, but just advertising, even taking advantage of the buses to advertise their own services or even things on the radio and things like that. Just, letting people know, what is being done to keep the buses sanitized and just, it's safe to ride and just some kind of, I know we had talked about hiring Brian Crowitz at one time. But we just kind of wondering where we are and maybe doing some things like that.
I think the feds are actually advising against public transportation.
Huh? That's not what comes to us. Ours is the TSA guidance that is the same for traveling on an airplane. And that is that we have to have specific signage up in our shelters and on our vehicles. And we have to maintain the 6 feet distance between the driver and the passenger, and then 3 feet between passengers that are not traveling in the same group. So
That's really good. I like that, but that's for people who have to or insist on traveling. Overall, the general advice is to not travel on public transportation, not planes, buses, trains. If you're going to, you got to have some kind of guidelines. But in fact, with vanilla COVID, they said 6 feet. With vanilla COVID, 6 feet probably wasn't enough, but with the variant D, it is definitely not enough. So putting people 3 feet apart, even with masks, is not safe.
So I just think letting people know, making people feel comfortable and feel safe, those that have to ride the bus or would like to ride the bus, gas prices continue to climb and, so there's, and including not just the U-Trans buses, but the Dollar Ride vans as well. Just let people know that, hey, these are safe to take. We've been sterilized, we're all the safety protocols are there. Just kind of in something that, packaged in some way that makes
Better
people feel
ship back
comfortable. Yeah.
I think that's the same distance recommendations and everything that TriMet uses. Because I keep in touch with my former coworkers and stuff, and that's why I've heard up there. But they have had problems with crowding on their buses just because some routes they had to reduce service, and mostly it's routes for serving school children. A lot of kids up there ride the public bus to school, but there have been some problems with crowding. But yeah, they do follow the 3 foot rule and the 6 foot rule for the bus drivers there right now, from what I've heard.
yes, I think it's pretty standard across the state.
And I think one of our STIF projects, wasn't it for schools, for high schoolers or something, giving them free rides or something? So have we done anything? Are we communicating or advertising that back to the students that are now returning to school?
So those are all things that I need to check into our website and see what we still have at, what we don't have at. And then
oh, and that darn survey keeps popping up too.
I saw
That
that
was really
yesterday
annoying.
too. Yes. So the website and advertising are part of our goals for this next quarter,
Yeah,
getting
yeah.
things back. We were just so intently focused on making sure that we got all that reporting done.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah, that was the priority.
That was priority.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you, next meeting, bring copies of the stiff?
absolutely.
Just, I can't, I mean, trying to remember what all those were. It'd be nice to be able to have those in front of us.
Mhm.
So,
I think it would be good to, so we want to keep updating these folders with our transit master plan
Mhm.
information. So as each tech memo comes out, we'll add it to the binder. But I think having the stiff projects in the binder
That'd be
to
helpful.
reference.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So we can definitely do that.
Perfect.
So the other thing that are is worthy of reporting is our medical transportation. We're just maintaining the same number of drivers. We haven't added any new ones on. But for the 3-month, June, July, August, we had a combined net income of $36,000. So, we're getting right about $12,000 a month income. That's with all of the drivers reimbursed for their mileage. So when we're looking at sources of income, steady sources of income, at least this is a steady source of income right now. So unless you have any other questions, I think I'm good.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Mhm.
Jennifer.
Hello, how are y'all? I did put a note in there, Cosette Reese, and I believe she's with the LTD. She had some advertising that they did, and I believe she was sharing it with people, but to let people know what they're doing as far as the cleaning and the sanitizing and this and that. So you might check with Cosette because she does have some that they did a while back. Yeah, so that would be good. We have grants that are going to be coming up. They are discretionary grants. I think I mentioned it before. The information as far as what is required for these grants is going to be coming out in October. It's going to be at 5310, a 5311, and a 5339. And then also there'll be some funds that were COVID related that we received, and there'll be discretionary grants, so you can apply for those as well. As far as the spacing, I did want to make mention that RVTD did actually just go back to 6 foot on their buses. They do have bigger buses than you guys do, so they kind of have that ability. But they, because the cases have been so high in the Rogue Valley, they decided that they needed to do that just for safety. So they went from the 3 foot back to the 6 foot. So that is a little bit of a bummer. In addition, one of the big topics today at PTAC, the Public Advisory Commission, was about mandating shots for staffing. So RVTD has a meeting on the 22nd of this month where their board members were recommending that all staff get vaccinated. And they have about 45 of their 90 drivers that are going to walk out. In addition, Jeff Hazen, who is up in, I think Tillamook or up north somewhere up there, on the coast. I guess his board also is talking about doing a mandate for vaccination, and he has all but one that will not be staying with them. So this is it's a big thing where people are, it's going to be a struggle if this becomes something that they mandate for transit providers, because there's a lot of people that are going to opt to not get the vaccination. So just wanted to kind of put that out there for you as a topic that was discussed at PTAC, and several transit agencies are dealing with this, and so you guys don't don't have to worry about the 100-person, and I believe it's just for public agencies, so at least that you fall under that, so. I think that's about it, other than the grants that are coming up. We do have our quarterly transit provider meeting that'll happen in November, and you guys are always welcome to listen in. And I should have more information about the grant funds that are going to be coming available in next month's meeting. That's it. Any questions?
Thank you, Jennifer. All right, item number 10, not on agenda. Anybody have anything?
So I didn't, but now that she mentioned that, you know, the vaccine piece, I think it's out there in the news, and people, I would imagine employees here are even wondering, are we gonna be required, or are we required? And it almost seems like we should make some kind of a statement as a board as to whether or not we would. I think I'm in favor of recommending that people get the shots and encouraging them to do it, and maybe even providing an incentive, you know, $100 or something like other agencies have done for them to get a shot, but not mandating it.
I think it's unconstitutional to force people to do anything. It's un-American and unconstitutional, and you shouldn't do it.
Well,
Ever.
I
don't know what
get,
discussion.
George Washington mandated smallpox vaccine for his army. And I think that mandates are a big part of America. They aren't unconstitutional, but I agree with what Mike said. I think people should want to do the right thing, and we can use a carrot. And I just think that's the only thing that's going to fly in Douglas County. And hell, we're going to fill our need for bus drivers.
I just think we gotta encourage it.
I think,
Not force it. Never force
I
it.
think that's fair. Basically, if you want to take back that the boards, you know, we encourage it, but we're not mandating it.
okay. That will put a lot of people at ease.
At this time, I mean, if something changes, obviously, you know,
We reserve that right to do something else, but.
Right.
you know.
but at this point in time,
As it stands, from what I understand, we basically would just shut our system down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not on the agenda, but maybe,
Yeah.
maybe we want to talk about this a little bit next month, and just even providing an incentive
Yep.
or something to encourage people to.
bring that up at the agenda bill.
Well,
Yeah.
given that COVID is a hand-to-mouth disease, encouraging cleanliness.
Like this?
Yeah. And studies have shown that airborne isn't how you get it. So, you know, cleanliness, of course, should be above everything else, which they're doing.
I had one thing, it deals with our financial report. Right now, it's tucked underneath consent agenda. And we have a great financial person on board now. And if there's no objection, I'd like to actually have pulled out from just a consent and actually have a line item so we can have a presentation on the financials each month.
Yeah.
Are you okay with that?
Sure. Sure.
Yeah.
Is the rest of the board okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we can just highlight some of
The key things.
the good things or the bad things that, you know, should be paying attention to.
Yeah.
We're not the experts, so,
Right.
yeah.
Well, if you do see this month and year to date now, we have gotten quite a bit of our funding in.
I saw that.
Income, so that's been great.
Anything else on item number 10, not on agenda? Okay, hearing none. Public comment.
It's public.
It's a good meeting.
Do we have anybody online? Public.
Natasha? Shelley?
All right. Hearing none, we will.
Somebody ding ding.
Natasha came back in.
Oh.
She's connected.
Natasha, do you have anything for the public comment by chance?
I guess you can't hear me.
There we are.
We can.
Now we
Hello?
can.
Okay. Hi. So I just have a comment. It really doesn't have much to do with anything. But as an industry that was mandated, I really wish I would have done more to encourage my team to get vaccinated before we were mandated. Because at this point, I'm probably going to lose somewhere between 45 and 60 team members because they were frustrated by the mandate. And I don't disagree. I believe in the vaccine, but I also strongly disagree with the mandate. So I would just say encouraging your team to vaccinate before it's a mandate. I regret not pushing harder. So that's just my 2 cents, if that makes any sense.
Maybe include providing some time to go get a shot.
Yeah,
No.
we have hosted this, tomorrow will be our 5th vaccination clinic. We've incentivized with $250 incentivization if you get vaccinated. I don't know, I think I could have educated team members differently. But once that mandate hit, people were mad and they feel like their rights have been imposed upon. And I don't know how to argue that because I don't have an option. I have to follow the law. I have to follow the rule. Because we can't afford a $500 per instance fine. It would cost our agency approximately $500,000 a month to not follow the mandate.
I agree. I think people will do the right thing if you give them a chance, but if you mandate something.
Yep.
That's un-American and completely wrong. You can't force, we're free here.
Yeah, I don't
Can't get your
disagree.
kid in school without vaccines. That's a mandate.
Yep.
You're not supposed to drive a car without your seatbelt on. That's a mandate.
Oh,
You're supposed to have auto insurance. That's a mandate.
that's not a mandate, that's a law. So
Well, it's a mandate because the law exists.
it's not a
The
mandate
idea
to
that it's unconstitutional is pure
Well, we're
baloney.
not-
It's all politics.
argue those things, but because
Mandates are laws. Mandates are laws.
We have a lot of opinion on that issue. And Natasha, I appreciate your comment on that. We will definitely push it here.
Thanks.
You.
Is there a recommendation for how much incentive?
We're actually gonna bring that up at the next meeting and talk about that, but if you want to go ahead and pass a message that the board is supporting people getting their vaccination, but we're not gonna force it. I think that's as much you want to do right now, and then we'll work on the incentive piece the next meeting.
Because
If you want to break
deadlines and things that are out there for other people.
If you wanna-
Yeah.
I guess we can go ahead and move into the agenda build. If you want to put together a proposal to send out, and we can discuss that and approve it at our next meeting.
Okay, I could do that.
And then I have the stiff.
Yeah, we're gonna have a driver's meeting, not this Saturday, but the following Saturday.
Okay.
So we can talk with them about it in detail then.
Perfect. As far as agenda, then I have the stiff projects. You're gonna put that in the binders, and so we can review that. You're gonna bring back a Title VI for us to approve. And that's all I have on my list.
Ron Sperry with the Government Ethics Commission discussion
Thank
to
you.
be continued on that.
Perfect.
And
Separate line item for.
Several items for financials.
the incentive, the financial. I know I have one more.
And then titles, not the Title VI,
Oh, Title VI was my other one.
was it Title VI?
Yeah, Title VI.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else for agenda build? Hearing none, I'll go ahead and move to item 13 and adjourn. Time is 7:10, 7:11.
Yes.
none of
One
these
time we
things
were here
are
till 10:30.
mandates.
Yeah. That's a long list.
I was like.
And I could have gone on and
Are
on.
we-